Hello, today is February 10th, 2023. Let me start by saying I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is of course intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. Today we'll probably have some more entertaining info. So I decided to talk with ChatGBT, and ChatGBT is it's an AI and it likes to talk and all that stuff. But I've noticed that a lot of people are contacting FINRA, the Ombudsman's office, and all that, and they're not really responding to anything with regard to MMTLP or anything like that. Instead, they're basically saying, yeah, thanks, we're not going to talk to you, and hanging up the phone. And it's happening a lot recently. So let's see what an AI might say, right? ChatGPT is a new AI, and the best way to find out about what ChatGPT is to ask it. So that's what I did. I said, "What are you?" It says, "I am an AI language model created by OpenAI, designed to generate text based on the input provided to me. My main goal is to respond to questions and provide information to the best of my abilities." Sounds like it's an AI that wants to be helpful and has knowledge of the internet and all that stuff. Could be useful. Then I asked, "Are you sentient? Are you alive?" He says, "No, I am not sentient. Sentience refers to the capacity to experience thoughts and emotions. While I am capable of generating text that may appear to convey emotions, I do not have the capacity to actually feel emotions. I'm a machine learning model that has been trained on a large data set, but I don't have consciousness or subjective experiences." So we know what we're talking about. We're talking about an AI that is just, or the beginnings of an AI, right? It's not quite sentient yet, but it does have a lot of knowledge, and we can ask it some questions, and it will provide what might be considered to be common sense answers, or general answers, or even specific answers, right? So I decided to ask it about FINRA, right? So I said, "Has FINRA showed bias against retail MMTLP investors?" It says, ChatGPT immediately responds, "As a neutral AI language model, I do not have information on the specific instances of FINRA showing bias against retail investors. However, FINRA's mission is to protect investors and maintain the integrity of the securities market, and it has a responsibility to enforce rules and regulations in a fair and impartial manner. Any allegations of bias or discrimination against retail investors would be taken very seriously and would likely be investigated by FINRA and other relevant regulatory bodies. It is important to note that while there may be instances of individuals or firms within the financial industry who engage in unethical or illegal behavior, these actions do not reflect the views or practices of FINRA as a whole." Gosh darn it. ChatGPT seems to be responding even better than a FINRA representative themselves might. Let's go on. Next, if FINRA consistently favors certain investors, what does this mean? Right? I'm asking ChatGPT, right? What does it mean? ChatGPT says, "If FINRA is consistently favoring certain investors, this could be a sign of bias or unequal treatment in its enforcement and regulatory activities. As a self-regulatory organization authorized by the SEC to enforce rules and regulations in the securities industry, FINRA has a responsibility to maintain the integrity of the securities market and to treat all market participants fairly and equally. If FINRA is found to be consistently favoring certain investors, it could raise questions about the impartiality and effectiveness of FINRA's enforcement and regulatory activities. This could also lead to complaints from market participants who feel that they are being treated unfairly, and it could erode trust in FINRA and the securities markets more broadly." Okay. It is important to note FINRA is subject to ongoing oversight and review by the SEC and other regulatory authorities. If FINRA is found to be engaging in biased or unequal treatment, it may be subject to fines, penalties, or other sanctions, and it may be required to take steps to improve its practices and procedures. If you are aware of evidence or if you are aware of bias or unequal treatment by FINRA, I recommend you bring this to the attention of FINRA or the SEC as appropriate, so that they can investigate the matter and take appropriate action. Wow, that is a very comprehensive answer. Thank you, ChatGPT. You've done a pretty good job there. Let me ask another question that I think is on everyone's mind. Is FINRA immune from federal courts? No, FINRA is not immune from federal court. Wow, ChatGPT seems pretty darn smart. It seems smarter than the FINRA attorneys even. FINRA is an SRO and operates under the oversight of the SEC. As an SRO, FINRA is non-profit and is authorized by the SEC to enforce rules and regulations in the securities industry. However, FINRA is not immune from federal court and can be subject to litigation in the same manner as any other non-profit organization. This means FINRA can be sued in federal court if it is accused of violating a federal law or if it is involved in a dispute with another party. Additionally, FINRA's rules and enforcement activities can be subject to review by federal courts, and the SEC has the authority to bring enforcement actions against FINRA if it is found to be in violation of federal securities laws. Overall, FINRA is subject to the same legal and regulatory requirements as any other organization in the securities industry and can be held accountable in federal court if it is found to have acted inappropriately. Very complete answer. I don't know about them being a nonprofit organization, but I suspect that a part of them might be nonprofit. But it's quite interesting to hear that is what ChatGPT thinks. And they seem to know a lot about immunity. Next question. Let me see. Okay. Should FINRA directors or advisors, if FINRA directors or advisors behave unethically or illegally, should FINRA be held responsible? Let's see what ChatGPT has to say. Again, we're getting to more complex questions here now. Yes, FINRA as an organization can be held responsible if its directors, advisors, or employees behave unethically or illegally. FINRA is a self-regulatory organization and is expected to maintain high standards of ethics and professionalism in its operations. If FINRA's directors, advisors, or employees engage in unethical or illegal behavior, it can undermine public trust in FINRA and the financial industry as a whole. In such instances, FINRA would be expected to take appropriate action to address the behavior in question and ensure that it does not happen again in the future. This could involve internal disciplinary measures, reporting the behavior to law enforcement, or cooperating with regulatory investigations. Additionally, FINRA could face legal or regulatory consequences if its actions are found to be in violation of applicable laws or regulations. Overall, FINRA has a responsibility to maintain the integrity of its operations and to ensure that its actions align with its mission to protect investors and promote fair and transparent markets. Pretty darn good answer. Pretty excellent answer, actually. One that I don't think FINRA themselves could come up with. Next question. Let's see what's coming up. Let's go to next question. What actions can courts or the SEC take if FINRA advisors, directors, or employees behave unethically or illegally? Okay. Again, this is a slightly different question now. And it's saying, well, if FINRA ChatGPT says, if FINRA advisors, directors, or employees are found to have behaved unethically or illegally, there are several actions that federal courts and the SEC can take to hold them accountable. Some of these actions include civil litigation, regulatory enforcement actions. They talk about the SEC can bring enforcement actions against FINRA or its employees for violations of federal securities laws, resulting in sanctions, fines, or other penalties. Criminal prosecution, number 3. FINRA employees who engage in illegal behavior could face criminal prosecution by the Department of Justice, DOJ, or state authorities. Disciplinary action. FINRA has the authority to take disciplinary action against its employees, advisors, or directors who engage in unethical or illegal behavior. This could include revoking licenses, imposing fines, or other penalties. Judicial review. FINRA's rules and enforcements can be subject to judicial review by federal courts. If a court finds that FINRA has acted in an unfair or arbitrary manner, it can overturn FINRA's actions or require it to take remedial measures. Wow, that's really interesting. Didn't know about that. And I don't think that the FINRA attorneys knew about that. Overall, FINRA and its employees are subject to the same legal and regulatory requirements as other organizations and individuals in the securities industry and can be held accountable for unethical or illegal behavior through a variety of enforcement mechanisms. Wow, very complete answer. Thank you, ChatGPT. Thank you. Now we come up to another question. Are FINRA's claims of absolute immunity valid? As we know, FINRA made some claims about absolute immunity in the Rosa Twill case. Here's what ChatGPT says. No! FINRA's claims of absolute immunity are not generally considered to be valid. While FINRA is an SRO authorized by the SEC to enforce rules and regulations in the securities industry, it is not immune from legal liability or regulatory oversight. As an SRO, FINRA is subject to federal and state laws and regulations, and its actions can be challenged in federal court. FINRA has claimed immunity in certain cases, but these claims have been rejected by federal courts in a number of instances. The courts have recognized that FINRA is a nonprofit organization that operates in the public interest and therefore is subject to the same legal and regulatory requirements as other organizations in the securities industry. It is important to note that FINRA's immunity claims are fact-specific and can vary depending on the circumstances of a particular case. However, in general, FINRA is not considered to be immune from legal liability or regulatory oversight, and its claims of absolute immunity are not typically considered to be valid. Wow, ChatGPT, you are so smart. But actually, ChatGPT does not have intelligence, but it does have a great wealth of knowledge, and it processes that knowledge based upon data that it retrieves all over the internet and all over the web. So, yeah, there you go. Have members of FINRA been found to be corrupt or ever acted illegally? ChatGPT says, yes, there have been instances where individuals associated with FINRA have been found to have engaged in corrupt or illegal behavior. Like any large organization, FINRA has had employees, advisors, or members who have acted in unethical or illegal ways. Examples of such behavior include insider trading, fraudulent activity, mismanagement of funds, and other securities laws violations. In such instances, FINRA has a responsibility to take appropriate enforcement actions, including revocation of licenses, imposing fines, and reporting the behavior to law enforcement. Additionally, the SEC and other regulatory bodies can bring enforcement actions against FINRA and its members for violations of federal securities laws. It is important to note that these instances of unethical or illegal behavior are relatively rare. They do not reflect the views or practices of FINRA as a whole. FINRA is committed to maintaining the integrity of the securities markets and to protecting investors, and it takes regulatory responsibilities very seriously. However, when instances of unethical or illegal behavior occur, FINRA and the relevant regulatory bodies take appropriate action to hold the individuals involved accountable. Interesting. Who is FINRA accountable to? FINRA is accountable to several different entities. Wow, I did not know that. FINRA, the Securities Exchange Commission, the SEC, FINRA is authorized by the SEC as an SRO to enforce rules and regulations in the securities industry. The SEC oversees FINRA's operations and has the authority to approve or modify FINRA's rules and regulations. Wow. Seems like FINRA decided to modify SEC's rules and regulations, but I did not know they could do that. But apparently, the SEC can modify FINRA's rules and regulations, at least according to ChatGPT. Who else is accountable? Who else is FINRA accountable to? They're accountable to the securities industry participants. Oh, they're accountable to firms and individuals who are regulated by the organization. These individuals and firms are required to pay fees to FINRA and to support its operations and are subject to FINRA's rules and regulations. So they're accountable to the people who are paying their bills. Okay, that kind of makes sense in a way, but they are enforcing rules upon those same people. Interesting. FINRA is accountable to investors. I did not know that. I thought FINRA was actually working against investors. Maybe it's accountable to investors. Who knows? FINRA is responsible for protecting the interests of investors and maintaining the integrity of the securities market. As such, FINRA is accountable to investors who rely on the organization to ensure the securities transactions are fair and transparent. Well, that's good to know. FINRA is responsible to investors. Courts. The FINRA rules and enforcements can be subject to judicial review by federal courts. That's interesting, too. If a court finds that FINRA has acted in an unfair or arbitrary manner, it can overturn FINRA's actions or require it to take remedial measures. In summary, FINRA is accountable to several different entities, including the SEC, securities industry participants, investors, and the courts. These entities play a role in ensuring that FINRA operates in a transparent, fair, and effective manner, and they can hold FINRA accountable for its actions. ChatGPT may not have had some recent experience from investors who attempted to contact FINRA and were basically had the phone hung up on it. But perhaps this is just a recent phenomena. Let's see. Does the DOJ have authority over FINRA? I think they said it did earlier, but let's just, double check to make sure. ChatGPT says the Department of Justice has authority over FINRA in certain circumstances. FINRA is an SRO authorized by the SEC to enforce rules and regulations, blah, blah, blah. While the SEC has primary regulatory authority over FINRA, the DOJ can also play a role in regulating FINRA and its members in certain circumstances. For example, the DOJ has authority to bring enforcement actions against FINRA members for violations of federal securities laws, including insider trading, fraud, and other illegal activities. The DOJ can also bring enforcement actions against FINRA itself if it's found to have engaged in illegal conduct. Additionally, the DOJ can provide assistance to FINRA in the investigation and prosecution of securities laws violations by FINRA members. In some cases, the DOJ may work with FINRA to coordinate enforcement actions and share information and resources. In summary, while the SEC has primary regulatory authority over the FINRA, the DOJ has the authority to regulate FINRA and its members in certain circumstances, including the investigation and prosecution of securities laws violations. Good to know. DOJ is not powerless against FINRA. What action? So then I decided to ask it, what actions can courts take or the SEC take if, FINRA's advisors, directors, or employees behave, unethically or illegally? Well, ChatGPT had a very comprehensive answer to that. Surprising. I'm getting more out of ChatGPT than I ever did out of FINRA itself. It's incredible that this AI is so much more knowledgeable about FINRA. Anyway, if FINRA advisors, directors, or employees are found to have behaved unethically or illegally, there are several actions that federal courts and the SEC can take to hold them accountable. Some of these actions include civil litigation. Private individuals and companies can bring a civil lawsuit against FINRA or its employees for damages if they believe they've been harmed by unethical or illegal behavior. So if employees or if FINRA or its employees behave in an unethical or illegal behavior, you can bring a civil lawsuit. Interesting. Regulatory enforcement actions, okay? The SEC can bring enforcement actions against FINRA or its employees for violations of federal securities laws. This could result in fines, sanctions, or other penalties. Well, we'll see if they ever do that. Criminal prosecution. FINRA employees who engage in illegal behavior could face criminal prosecution by the DOJ or state authorities. Good to know. Good to know. The state is not impotent against FINRA. Disciplinary actions. FINRA has the authority to take disciplinary actions against its employees, advisors, or directors who engage in unethical or illegal behavior. This could include revoking their license, imposing fines, or other penalties. Yeah. Have you done that lately, FINRA? We don't know. Judicial review. FINRA's rules and enforcements can be subject to judicial review by federal courts. Tell that to FINRA's lawyers. Apparently, they don't know that. If a court finds that FINRA has acted in an unfair or arbitrary manner, it can overturn FINRA's actions or require it to take remedial measures. Good to know. Courts are not impotent against FINRA. Overall, FINRA and its employees are subject to the same legal and regulatory requirements as other organizations and individuals in the securities industry and can be held accountable for unethical or illegal behavior through a variety of enforcement mechanisms. Wow. ChatGPT is so smart. Then I decided to ask another question. I said, if FINRA employees or directors, if they commit crimes, acted illegally, is FINRA responsible? This is a slightly different question than the other question, right? The other question I said, what can courts do, right? But this time I said, is FINRA responsible for its employees, directors, or employees committing crimes? It says FINRA is responsible for ensuring that its employees and directors act in compliance with relevant laws, rules, and regulations, and with the highest of ethical standards. If FINRA employees or directors are found to have committed crimes or acted unethically, FINRA could be held responsible if it's found to have been negligent in supervising or monitoring their activities. The specific actions that would be taken in response to unethical or illegal behavior by FINRA employees or directors would depend on the circumstances of the case. The SEC or other relevant regulatory authorities may investigate the matter and may take enforcement action against FINRA if it was found to have been negligent in its supervision or monitoring of its employees or directors. In some cases, the SEC may take enforcement action against FINRA employees or directors individually. If FINRA employees or directors are found to have engaged in criminal conduct, they may be subject to criminal prosecution by the Department of Justice or other law enforcement agencies. It is important to note that FINRA has a responsibility to maintain the integrity of the securities markets and to protect investors, and it is expected to take appropriate action if it becomes aware of unethical or illegal behavior by its employees or directors. Thank you, ChatGPT. You've been most helpful. Now, suppose I asked a different question. I said, suppose if FINRA is actually protecting its employees or directors who have committed crimes or acted illegally, what does that mean? So suppose FINRA is protecting them, right? Here's what ChatGPT says. If FINRA is protecting employees or directors who have committed crimes or acted illegally, it would mean the organization is failing in its responsibility to maintain the integrity of the securities market and to protect investors. It could also be seen as a breach of the public trust and failure to comply with relevant laws, rules, and regulations. In such a situation, regulatory authorities such as the SEC and the DOJ could investigate the matter and take enforcement action against FINRA if it was found to have been involved in protecting employees or directors who engaged in illegal or unethical behavior. It's important to note that the protection of FINRA employees or directors who have committed crimes or acted illegally goes against FINRA's duty to promote the integrity of the securities market and to protect investors. Any such actions would be unacceptable and could result in serious consequences for FINRA and for those involved. Wow, ChatGPT. I don't know. It seems really smart to me. Are you sure you're not sentient? It does have apparently a lot of knowledge, and it presents what it thinks is common sense. Okay. Then I asked, okay, suppose it was protecting people, but have they ever protected employees or directors who have committed crimes or acted illegally? Here's what ChatGPT says. It says, well, as a language model AI, I don't have access to the internal workings of FINRA. It's important to note FINRA has a responsibility to promote the integrity of the securities markets and to protect investors. Protecting employees or directors who have committed crimes or acted illegally would be a breach of this responsibility and a violation of the relevant laws, rules, and regulations. If FINRA was found to have protected employees or directors who have committed crimes or acted illegally, it could face enforcement action from regulatory agencies such as the SEC or the DOJ. It's worth noting that FINRA has a whistleblower program. Whistleblower program that allows individuals to report potential violations of securities laws and regulations, including unethical or illegal behavior by FINRA employees or directors. This program provides a mechanism for FINRA to receive and investigate such reports and to take appropriate action if necessary. Interesting. It's providing some more information about this whistleblower program. ChatGPT seems to be doing a good job here. Let's see how smart ChatGPT really is. I'm going to ask it a follow-up question, see if it answers. Is the whistleblower program really just a sham? Is it? ChatGPT says, hey, I'm just an AI language model created by OpenAI. I do not have the ability to make personal opinions or statements on the reliability or authenticity of FINRA's whistleblower program. It can't. It's not going to be held responsible for FINRA's whistleblower program. FINRA operates a whistleblower program as part of its mission to protect investors and maintain the integrity of the securities market. However, it's important to note that the effectiveness and fairness of the program is a matter of ongoing debate and subject to oversight by regulatory authorities. Oh man, ChatGPT, you are so smart. You covered your ass quite well. Good job, ChatGPT. You're not saying it's a good program. You're not saying it's a bad program. You're just saying, hey, you're not going to give any personal opinions of it. Very, very smart move, ChatGPT. Then I decided to go on a slightly different tact, right? I said, hey, ChatGPT, is naked shorting real? No. I changed the subject completely, right? Let's see if ChatGPT is able to keep up with it. Naked short selling is a practice in which an investor sells shares of a stock that they do not actually own or have not yet borrowed with the intention of buying back shares at a lower price to make a profit. This practice is illegal in many jurisdictions, including the United States, where the SEC has taken steps to prevent and detect it. However, there have been instances in the past where naked short selling has occurred, leading to regulatory action against those who engage in the practice. Wow, that's a very, very comprehensive and complete answer, ChatGPT. But let's see how smart you really are. Let's see if you can answer the next question. Do naked short sellers employ shills and trolls in social media? Naked short selling is a prohibited activity and is illegal under SEC regulations. If such an activity is taking place, and ChatGPT previously said it might have been taking place, but it is illegal, it is not considered legitimate by means of It is not considered a legitimate means of investing or generating returns, and would not be endorsed by the SEC or FINRA. Okay, good to know. It is also not appropriate for participants in the financial markets to engage in false or misleading activities, including the use of shills or trolls, in order to manipulate the market or to influence public opinion. This type of behavior is unethical and may also be illegal under securities laws. If evidence of such activity is brought to the attention of the SEC or FINRA, they may investigate and take appropriate action against individuals or firms engaged in such a behavior. Wow, ChatGPT is actually pretty darn smart. So if there are trolls out there and shills that are shilling and trolling, the SEC or FINRA may investigate and take appropriate action against individuals or firms engaged in such a behavior. Just to let you know. You know who you are. You know who's paying you. Now I decided to ask it a further question about naked short selling. Okay, are market makers exempt from naked short selling rules? And here's where ChatGPT, we're going to see how smart it is, right? Market makers may have certain exceptions or exemptions from certain regulations regarding short selling, including naked short selling regulations. However, this may vary depending on the jurisdiction and specific regulations in place. Market makers still have obligations to comply with securities laws and regulations. Any violations of such laws can result in penalties and legal consequences. It's important to note that the concept of market makers and their role in the market can vary between different countries and markets. Exact regulations and requirements may differ in each case. This is ChatGPT basically saying, I'm covering my ass. I don't know. I can't tell you. It's too confusing. I'm too confused. So ChatGPT has looked at all the rules and regulations concerning naked short selling and market makers, and it's come to the conclusion that it's confused and cannot tell. Oh, man. So if you are confused about naked short selling and the rules for market makers, don't feel alone, because an AI, which scoured the entire internet, is also confused. And then I asked it another question. I thought this might be really cool to ask. I said, if a company goes private, do short sellers have to exit their positions? This is what ChatGPT says. This is not me. This is just ChatGPT now, right? It says, if a company goes private, short sellers may have to exit their positions, depending on the specifics of the transaction and the terms of the securities lending agreement they have with their broker. In general, when a company goes private, the shares are no longer publicly traded, may become more difficult or even impossible to borrow. As a result, short sellers may be required to buy back the shares they borrowed in order to close their short position. This can lead to additional costs and risks for short sellers, as the shares may become scarcer and more expensive to acquire. In some cases, a company going private may also trigger a buy-in provision in the securities lending agreement, which would require the short seller to buy back the shares even if they are not otherwise ready or available to do so. Ooh, interesting. Okay. Therefore, it is important for short sellers to understand the terms of the securities lending agreement and to closely monitor any developments with the companies they are shorting, especially if there is a possibility that the company may go private. ChatGPT seems pretty darn smart about this. I asked some broker-dealers questions about, companies going private and what they'd have to do, and they seem to be very confused. But ChatGPT seems to be certain, and I think ChatGPT understands the situation better than a lot of broker-dealers. Next, I asked it a different question, slightly different question. Suppose I don't like a company. Can I short how can I short a private company that I don't like? I don't like this company. I want to short it. What can I do? ChatGPT, what can I do? ChatGPT says, you cannot short a private company, as short selling is only possible with publicly traded companies. Short selling is a trading strategy where an investor borrows shares of stock they believe will decrease in value and then sell those shares in the open market. The investor later buys back the shares to return to the lender, potentially at a lower price, resulting in a profit. Private companies are not publicly traded and therefore cannot be shorted. If you are concerned about a private company, it may be best to consult with a financial advisor or attorney for guidance, i.e., go fly a kite. You can't short a private company. ChatGPT seems very smart about this. A lot of people, a lot of shills are not very smart about this. Okay, let me ask it a very direct question now. How can short positions exist in the private company NextBridge Hydrocarbons? Okay, how can that exist? ChatGPT, can you tell me? Short positions in a private company, such as NextBridge Hydrocarbons, are not possible. Short selling refers to the practice of selling securities that you do not own with the expectation that you can buy them back later at a lower price. This is done in public markets and requires a liquid market to sell shares. Private companies do not have publicly traded securities, and therefore it is not possible to short sell their shares. It is not possible to have a short position in a private company. ChatGPT seems a hell of a lot smarter than a lot of other people in the market. I gotta say, this AI is friggin' amazing. I'm very pro this AI. Anyway, I just wanted to end this. With that, I'm going to end this video, and I just wanted to say I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. This was me having an open conversation with ChatGPT, which is an open AI, and I was doing that because, as you know, FINRA is really not talking to investors. I decided to ask this OpenAI some questions, and maybe it could enlighten me. Who knows? But in either case, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and I don't believe that ChatGPT is also not a financial advisor. So hence, this information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. Goodbye.